I do believe that we are down as much as Europe, which isn't right. Europe's directly impacted in terms of the energy costs. But let me just back up for a second. This is horrendous. That he is going to get away with it, which I think he can, because he's got basically a lightning strike here, is evil. But at the same time, I recognize that we have thought about this every day. I don't think President Biden could have prepared us more for how this was going to happen. There were daily reports this was going to happen. So now the market's reacting like it's a shock, and that means you got to go against the market because the market's could be wrong today.
Okay, so you believe this is, again, we don't want to make light of the humanitarian crisis that is unfolding. That said, we're here to talk about the implications economically and for markets. And what I'm hearing you say is there may be an opportunity here?
I am saying there may be an opportunity. Now, we've got Friday, which is historically a weekday when you go into a war. Monday, where people are discovering this. I think you always have to remember that there are people who woke up today and looked at their 401k and said, I got to take some action here. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, David, we must understand that we have been preparing ourselves endlessly for this. That does not mean we can't go down again.
No,
and there have
been asset managers who've been preparing as well by getting short, and perhaps are starting to. In fact, I talked to a couple this morning, actually cover a bit here, because if you've been paying attention, certainly if you read that speech earlier this week from Putin,
the speech was a Stalinist speech.
It made it clear that, perhaps clearer, that this was a very significant possibility.
Right.
And so, there are those who are going to start to actually use this as an opportunity to cover shorts that they've already put in as a result of expectations.
And sell oils, because oil should be sold, because their oil is up on the spike.
The question I keep getting is how sustained is the move in oil? Because of any economic ramification, broadly speaking, it certainly is that one. You obviously pointed out energy prices in Europe, which has a broader impact there. Certainly natural gas prices were up dramatically. We've talked a lot here about Germany's decisions in terms of relying on solar and wind and saying no to nuclear, and how they're ruining that decision perhaps there and in other parts of Europe. Not as much France, by the way, which still has a huge nuclear footprint.
They have that excellent way to be able to store interest. I think, Carl, one of the things that we got to recognize is that their problems are not our problems. Now, we started at 4 o'clock. We were down much less. We do have abundant natural gas. They do not. We do not have an energy problem in this country. We have a surfeit of energy, particularly if we wanted to drill, but we've held back. I don't think that, and if you're some of these oil companies, their ratio is $30, $40. It's worth it for them to drill, even though that they've held back. So I do think the oils should be scaled out of. I think that if you want to buy yield, and I do that really at these prices, if stocks that have yield in a flight to quality treasuries make a lot of sense to me. You'll notice that a bunch of them aren't even down. Anything that is drug and therefore not related to the recession that this market is predicting, I think is very attractive today. I even think that you can go buy the Proctors. Procter, if it breaches 150, you buy it, because we're going to see a slowdown. And it's now I'm not saying that we're going to have a big rollback in inflation, but you have to buy the stocks that, if you presume that J. Powell moves anyway, well, you buy drugs, you buy consumer packaged goods stocks, even though that they have runaway inflation.
Even with the currency effects, and even with these slew of names that have not had good things to say about the consumer this week, we got more last night. Everything from eBay to Bed Bath to
discretionary.
Discretionary.
Hertz,
by the way, is going to be down.
Discretionary. This is discretionary. I don't want to buy anything that doesn't need, where you don't have to go. I mean, I think that you're not going to stop buying J&J products, even as much as I think that there are issues legally. I just don't want to get ahead of what I regard as being an opportunity over a 3-day period. If this war ends, and war ends because a Russian has been installed, we've not really seen the Ukrainian president of late, then what happens? The Germans continue to say no to Nord 2. They wait till the spring.
They do, you would expect that the sanctions would deepen and or stay in place for a long period of time.
This is a very different economy than 1997. Mm-hmm. It's a self-sustaining economy.
You're talking Russia's economy.
Yes, and unless you think that China comes in and says, you know what? We are now going to risk fracturing our newfound relationship because we're so embedded into Belt and Roll. Remember when you fly into Milan, all you see are giant Belt and Road Initiative signs, PRC, 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 in much of Europe. So the PRC does not want to disable Europe.